Madam President, nearly 32 years ago, Lithuania, a tiny nation on the Baltic Sea, dared to reclaim its freedom from the Soviet Union. At that time, the Soviet Union was one of the world's superpowers. The reaction from Moscow took 11 months, and it was brutal. On January 11th, 1991, 31 years ago this week, Soviet tanks rolled in to crush Lithuanian freedom. It would become known as Lithuania's Bloody Sunday. In the capital city of Vilnius, crowds gathered at the TV Tower and Parliament Square to protest the resistance of the Russians and to defend their new independent national legislature. I was lucky. I was there to see the efforts by the people of Lithuania, in this tiny nation, to protect what they were starting with a new parliament and free elections for the first time in almost 50 years. 13 martyrs died in the Soviet Union's brutal attempt to crush the restoration of Lithuanian independence. But to the astonishment of the entire world, after 2 days of bloodshed and killing, the Soviet tanks turned around and left. Against all odds, that tiny nation of Lithuania threw off 50 years of Soviet tyranny and occupation. They soon were joined by Latvia and Estonia, where similar courage was shown, and then by other Eastern European nations held captive by the Soviet bloc. Today, I am proud to say Lithuania remains a free and independent democracy. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, at the time he ordered the tanks to withdraw from Lithuania 31 years ago, came to realize that you can brutalize a people who are determined to be free, but you can't defeat them. Ultimately, freedom will prevail. It's a tragedy that Russian President Putin, Vladimir Putin, cannot or will not learn that lesson of history. Instead, today, he is intimidating Ukraine with the same discredited tactics that failed in the Baltics 3 decades ago. Madam President, I was fortunate to be invited on a trip in the year 2014 with the late Senator John McCain of Arizona. He never missed visiting the hotspots in the world. And we went to Kyiv in Ukraine and walked down to the Maidan Square, which had been the place where the people of Ukraine had stepped forward to demand their freedom. Senator McCain invited me to be part of that delegation during the extraordinary moment when the Ukrainian people were preparing to risk their lives for freedom. We were joined on our trip to Kyiv by Senators Barrasso, Johnson, Murphy, and others. We walked somberly through the makeshift shrines set up in the Maidan, memorializing those who'd lost their lives in Ukraine's peaceful protest for a better future. They stopped us at one point and pointed to a place and said, one of the protesters was standing here when the government sniper killed him. That's why there were flowers and candles at that site. We were planning to travel to the eastern part of the country as well, but we were too late. Russians and Vladimir Putin had already invaded with their little green men and had seized the territory of Crimea. Yet in the ensuing years, despite Russia's military invasion and occupation of eastern Ukraine, the Ukrainian people have thrived and built on their democratic aspirations. As with any democracy, there's always area of improvement, but the Ukrainian people have clearly decided their future is with the community of democracies and not with Moscow. And yet that basic human desire to be free and democratically choose one's leaders is apparently too much for Russian leader Vladimir Putin, who is now threatening a further massive military invasion of Ukraine. He's amassed some 100,000 troops on their border, preparing for that invasion. It's not enough that Putin denies the Russian people their basic freedom. He's determined to eradicate similar aspirations on Russia's border to protect his undemocratic regime. President Biden and members of both parties in this chamber have been swift to condemn Putin's threatened further invasion of Ukraine. President Biden has made it clear that any such move by Russia will be met with rapid and severe economic sanctions. The chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Menendez of New Jersey, has drafted legislation that would impose historic sanctions if Russia further invades Ukraine. The bill's approach is sweeping and clear, and I support it. I agree with our president and the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. This is the right message for us to send from President and the United States Senate to Vladimir Putin. Chairman Menendez's solution also provides assistance to the Baltic states in standing up to both Putin and China, a timely measure I want to thank my colleague for including in this bill. It's the bill we should actually be debating on the Senate floor. Instead, we will be forced to vote this week or soon on a different and weaker response to the crisis on Ukraine's border. The junior senator from Texas is the author of this weaker approach. He's managed to force a vote on it by holding hostage dozens of President Biden's nominations. His approach includes a provision to remove the waiver for sanctions against a new gas pipeline between Russia and Germany. Let me be clear, this Nord Stream 2 pipeline is a proposal I've been critical of for a long time. I've urged our European allies to diversify their natural gas supply away from Russia. President Biden's position on Nord Stream 2 is the same, that the pipeline could effectively undermine European security by increased reliance on Moscow. But the truth is, construction on that pipeline did not begin in the last year. It started under President Trump. I don't think you'll be hearing that, President, in the speeches of the junior senator from Texas. Despite congressional sanctions and restrictions, by the time Biden entered office, that pipeline was 95% complete. Where was the Republican outrage when the lion's share of the pipeline was built under the Trump administration? Were dozens of critical nominations brazenly and dangerously held then? No. Given the pipeline's near completion this spring, President Biden waived some, but not all, sanctions on Nord Stream 2 in an effort to mend relations with Germany and its new government. They're one of our closest allies and partners. We need to continue such close cooperation with our European partners so long as they stand with us to effectively deter further Russian provocation. And President Biden announced an agreement with Germany that involves securing Ukraine and Europe's energy sector, as well as imposing sanctions on Russia. This is important. The president still has the authority to impose additional sanctions in Nord Stream 2. And in fact, just this November, the administration sanctioned a Russian-linked ship in connection with it. The bill offered by my colleague from Texas does not provide any new authority to the president. It only takes away his waiver authority to force sanctions, setting a dangerous precedent and jeopardizing the administration's flexibility to respond to escalation by the Russians. This cruise bill will hardly deter the potential Russian invasion of Ukraine, only serve to complicate the efforts to repair relations with our European ally Germany, which has critical energy needs. I believe we should leave the flexibility of how and when to further sanction this pipeline to the president as part of a larger approach in dealing with Putin. For this reason, I urge my colleagues to support the wiser approach by the senior senator from New Jersey to send a serious, credible response to Russia if it further invades Ukraine. Madam President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
We'll call the roll.